The watch industry is completely without any real hard information, any hard data on how often your watch is supposed to break, how often watches break.
Not service, break.
Break.
Yes.
Do 3% of watches break? Do 5? Do 10? Some brands I've heard of even 14% of watches are expected to break within the first 3 years of ownership. That is insane.
Yes.
So today's conversation is about kind of, understanding in a very realistic sense, what is fair? What is fair and why isn't this getting better? Right?
Yes.
Interesting conversation. Looking forward to having it. What is up, Watch Fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop.
My name is Michael, and this video is sponsored by Squarespace.
More on our friends from Squarespace later.
Yes, sir.
Today I'm wearing a beautiful vintage Piaget. What are you wearing?
G-Shock DW5000, baby.
I would consider this watch, being an ultra thin and vintage, likely to break, right? In the grand scheme of watches, this is more delicate than a Submariner. I have never had any issues with a Piaget before in my life. These watches are built so well. It's unbelievable. Am I going to go exploring, mountains with it? Maybe I would, because I'll have probably a whole team of people with me. I'll be doing
also being carried.
I'll be fine,
on,
right?
Like poles.
Of course, I'll be fine. That watch probably is better for exploring, though.
Yes.
So today's conversation is all about basically that.
Use case tests.
Exactly. What watches should we realistically expect to be more likely to break, to be more prone to error? Right.
Also, when is it your fault and when is it the brand's fault?
Exactly.
Because there are scenarios of both.
What is the kind of contract that you engage in with the brand when you buy a watch? It's like reasonable expectations for usage. What are you supposed to be doing with your watch? What are you not supposed to be doing? Is it now my fault if it breaks because I was, in your example,
hammering on a bobcat, whatever? Oh, or jumping in the water.
Or jumping into water, right, hammering things, right, experiencing shock, or like you said, being on a bobcat, like a vibrating device, like a Sibian, things like this.
Some sort of vibrating contraption that gyrates the hips.
But we mean it, right? Like, what is reasonable? And why isn't there more clarity here? Now, this kind of brings us into the kind of the bulk of the conversation, the meat and potatoes, and then we'll get into Adam Savage, right, which is an interesting conversation. The bulk is watch brands from Swatch, from Richemont, all over, are very often, constantly even, bragging about and marketing developments in their technology.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
In their metal technology. You've even said that you don't think that it's totally far-fetched that scratches will be a thing of the past one day.
Truly, yeah.
Right? I think you're dead on about that. Be it in metal, be it in alternative materials within the movement, silicon hairspring, right? For one of them, right? All these different components, right? Different barrel technology to reduce friction, all these different things. IWC has had a huge effort in that, utilizing ceramic within their movements to reduce the likelihood of problem down the road, right? That's all well and good.
Sure.
But still, there's what you call a lemon.
Yes.
Right? And you recently, we'll talk all about your experience with a room of lemons, right?
Yeah, truly.
But no matter how good a watch model may be and how good the technology may be, what percentage of the overall output from the brand is expected to just be screwed from day one? Right? Expected to just not work. Is that 5%, 10%, like we said, up to 14%?
That is a crazy, 1 out of every 10, more than 1 out of every, less, 1.5 out of 10, I guess, technically, are going to be broken just by you buying the watch.
It's insane, right? So this whole conversation kind of begins with you, or rather with us in the beginning. It's kind of unthinking that when you buy a luxury watch, like, it's not going to break.
Because it's advertised as a tool watch.
It's a tool watch.
Especially in this age.
James Bond had one, right? Like,
right.
What are we talking about, right? Of course it shouldn't break. So that's the least of the worries.
You went to the bottom of the ocean with this watch, then to the moon, then you climbed Mount Everest, and it broke on my way to the office.
Right.
Like, it fell off my wrist.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So we never really thought about that, never really expected that to be a reality. Enter your story.
Yes. Our event, I've talked about this before, so I'll make it brief. I was standing with a bunch of guys at the event talking about watches, and I was telling the story of my Explorer. It was broken before I got it. This wasn't that the Explorer couldn't handle this, but I dove in some water, watch broke. That sucked. Terrible feeling. But what we ended up getting into was everybody in that circle, who, mind you, is not in combat, is not a Navy SEAL. Most of them are in suits and loafers, are like, oh yeah, dude, my watch, like the crystal fell off. Yep. My watch, the movement stopped keeping time. My watch, the dial inverted. My watch, the bracelet fell off.
And these are all like expensive watches. These aren't cheap watches.
Yeah, I would say the cheapest watch in that collection was probably $3,000.
Right.
Still. So everybody there is kind of talking about it, and I was like, wow, that's a lot.
Because your Explorer had broken.
My Explorer had broken. So I thought, well, I broke it or it's broken before, but this is a very rare thing to happen. But when you're taking a tiny sample and everybody in that sample is being like, oh yeah, dude, like this happened, this happened, this happened. I guess it was cool that I got to like fix my watch, but I can't believe it broke. That was the first sign where I was like, that's a small sample size with a lot of broken things.
Right.
Then a friend of mine has a different watch, trying to kind of keep brands out of this for a while. And it's a beautiful watch, expensive watch. The epitome of this brand's everyday tool watch. Glass fell off. Then another day, the dial inverted. Then another day, I think it just stopped ticking or something like that. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating. And then we get to Adam Savage, which you haven't seen the video, correct? He talked about Seiko modern culture and everything like that. And he was pretty well known for having an Omega Seamaster and I think a Speedmaster, 2 Omegas. In the video, he's wearing an SKX and he goes, I like this, I wear this watch the most because sadly the 2 Omegas that I got were both lemons and they have to be sent back to Omega all the time. Both
That's
of them.
terrible marketing.
From a watch guy, it's like different, but whatever. He was like, yeah, my wife got it for me. It was a really special event. Like, they mean the world to me, but they're always in the shop. It takes a long time to get them fixed. They're expensive. So in the video, he instead is being like, here is the Heritage South Seamaster. You know what I'm talking about? He's like, here it is, but it's actually a Seiko. So that way it's still bulletproof, it's still reliable, and it's cheap. And I got it on eBay, and like that will be the watch that I wear around, not my Omegas because they keep breaking.
Wow. That is wild.
That is awful PR. Yeah. If I was Omega, I immediately would be like, we have to get you in ads. We have to talk about your watches. We have to do something to figure this out. But that to me was like, okay, my small sample size, another small sample size, my neighbor, and now Mythbusters, like another still small sample size, but everybody's saying it's a lemon, which kind of makes me think it's not a lemon at the end of the day. It was a problem.
Yeah, well, I wonder, there isn't a great deal of transparency with the brands and their, error rate, right? Like, of course, there's not really good consumer reporting on the watch, on these watches, right? Yeah. You've got extensive research or reporting done by all publications everywhere from Hodinkee to YouTube, right?
Sure, yeah.
About whether or not a watch is good on its merits. There's a ton done there. You can make a very informed decision on that, right? Like, okay, this particular Omega is better for me because of this, and it's worth buying because of this, and this particular Bulgari is good for this, and like you can understand history, you can understand design, proportionality, understand everything. But there's actually no public information on what is the likelihood that this will actually break down the road.
Yeah, it's essentially like, would you, if there's a bulletproof vest company that says their bulletproof vests are impenetrable,
right?
But you find out that like, well, some of them are,
right?
The other ones,
they're just lemons.
Yeah, they're just. Which in that case, you return them. You get a new one.
Right. Well, your kids return it.
Your kids have to return it on your behalf. You still get full credit, obviously minus shipping. But it's one of those things where it's like, great. So it is impenetrable if I get one that works.
Right. Understanding what makes one that works versus what makes a lemon is impossible, right? Because these watches have so many components, literally hundreds of components, and so many little things can go wrong. And I think it's part of it. I think it's a natural part of watchmaking is error, right? Like everything else.
Of course,
it's so complex, so it's impossible to, I think, eliminate completely. But I would be interested in brands, of course, making strides to mitigate that lemon factor, maybe before they continue their development on alternative materials, right? Like I don't actually,
maybe before you're making things out of agnolite, you should make sure that they don't fall apart.
Make sure it doesn't break. I think that's just good sense.
But that doesn't sell watches.
that doesn't sell watches. Like someone once told us both. It's oh no, you weren't there. That was Malcolm. I'm sorry. You guys are just.
Well, I was probably busy, right?
Someone said he was in the aerospace world, particularly selling safety features, and he said develop a technological product that saves money on gas, and you become a billionaire. Develop a safety feature that saves lives, and you have to live in your mom's house.
Yeah. Well,
and it's like, oh, really? He's like, oh, yeah, no one buys safety until it's too late. Like, no one cares. No one's wondering, really, if this Omega is going to break, or if this Longines is going to break, or if this whatever is going to break. They don't wonder that. They just assume that's a given. Of course it's not going to break. I'm spending $5,000 on a watch. The least I can get is one that works. And plus, I'm sorry, but this is optimistic, right? Like,
this is my watch.
Of course,
son's watch.
Michael knows that I'm picking up a Jaguar this week.
Super reliable brand.
I'm picking up an F-Type, and it's very, very cool, and I'm very excited. But
cars are coming into some big ways soon.
Right, and part of it is people are like, wait, you're getting a Jaguar because you don't want to have mechanical issues?
From your
And I'm
G-Wagon?
like, well, the Jaguar it has a 6-year, 100,000 mile warranty. Like, it's fine. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, what's gonna happen? And they're like, well, you're going to have a loaner car a lot. And I'm like, but is that really going to happen? It's all going to be fine. It's an expensive car. What are we talking about? It's going to be fine. So it's in green, by the way.
By the way, it's in green.
Yeah.
It's not.
You know what's funny? I was actually going to get one in blue. And then I was talking to a girl who, God knows if I'll be talking to her still when I get a car. But she's like, the blue makes it look like you just signed a football contract. If you get a green one, that makes it look like a gentleman. And I was like, you're right. I don't want to be a football player. You're right. Stay Plus, it's my favorite color.
It is your favorite color. Yeah. So that runs into this whole car thing. First off, you reminded me of the Ford Pinto.
Yeah.
You know how they blew up?
Yeah.
Apparently, I've listened to a podcast about them while I was on a flight one day. Apparently, the Ford Pinto did not actually blow up more than other cars of the era.
No.
But it was like, oh, that one does blow up. That is the poster child of that.
That's funny.
That is the premier, like, safety comes second because the big decision of where the gas tank should be is why the Ford Pinto blows up. They put it, I forget where, I think forward, because then you could fit golf clubs in the back seat, or in the trunk.
Right.
And nobody wants a car that can't fit golf clubs.
Right.
So that's why
it's actually oddly true. It's weirdly true. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
When I was looking up trunk space, and it was, can 2 golf bags fit in the back of the F-Type? I'm like, what? Who cares?
And you were like, yeah, who cares? And then one day when you go golfing, you're like, oh, this sucks.
Oh,
yeah. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. You have a website and domain.
Listen, I wouldn't be here right now as an entrepreneur, as a young entrepreneur without Squarespace, right? When I started my first company, Theo and Harris, about 9 years ago, I didn't have the budget nor the, capacity on the internet to build my own website.
Sure.
I legitimately couldn't have started. I couldn't have started the company. And then someone recommended that I try Squarespace. I actually tried someone else first, and it was a disaster, so I was scared. And I did Squarespace, and it was incredible. What a relief, right? Squarespace gave me the ability, and gives entrepreneurs all over the ability to build not just a beautiful website, a website that looks like it's literally just a professional, like $1 million website, but also something functional enough and scalable enough that I went on to build a retail company that does millions of dollars in watches, right? Yeah. It's amazing that this even happened. The whole thing is amazing. Again, I would not be here without Squarespace. I don't only recommend that you go sign up for Squarespace now if you're starting a business, but also for you folks out there that have your businesses and your websites, make an account, poke around, play with your templates, and I can almost guarantee you're going to say by the end, maybe I should transition over to Squarespace. They're that good.
Yeah, and Squarespace is now still making it even easier from when you started the website. One, with their Fluid engine that allows you to drag and drop images and text and basically do exactly what you want to do with your website whenever you want to do it. You can schedule blog posts in advance so you don't have to worry about posting and times and everything like that. And finally, if you have a business, you're starting a business, you have a retail shop, you're going to have one in the future, Squarespace has you covered with their point of sale system so that way you can grow with Squarespace over time.
Exactly.
So if you're interested and you want 10% off your first order of a website or domain, check out the link in the description and use our code Theo Harris to save 10%. So the first question is the philosophy that more should be more reliable, I should say, to a certain point. Perfect example, your G-Wagon versus my Camry. Camry?
Camry.
Your G-Wagon has some recurring issue that keeps breaking, but you can keep getting it fixed, which will be the larger thing in a second. My Camry has been pretty solidly reliable. There's something I need to get fixed on it right now, but really, I can still drive it broken. Like, it's just a tank. So the first thought is, just before I get into the larger part, what do you think of that general idea? Like, the car's fancier, it will break.
100%. I mean, when it's more complicated, there are more things to break, right? So that's kind of goes to the territory. It's the worst part about cars. It's just, I suppose, cars like watches. It's definitely something I would love to change. I'd love to spend 20% more money on the product with a guarantee that it's not going to break. Like, I'd love that, right? But a lot of folks, even knowing that the thing will break, it's just like, well, what am I going to do? Like, drive a car that doesn't excite me?
Yeah.
Now, not everyone wants a car that excites them.
Of course.
Like, I don't think your Camry excites you.
No, well,
it just fucking works.
Sometimes it does a little thing I never expect.
It just works. Like, it's just a good car that works.
Right.
But obviously, if you get into like this whole car thing, you're like, I know, but I want something that really just, it gets my heart pumping.
Well, so
and then breaks.
That's the big question. My car is built to be reliable for everyone.
Right.
People that, like, you go to change your oil, there's no oil in the car.
Right.
How is this running?
Right.
Your car will explode if that happens. Right. But that's the idea of your car. It is then your responsibility to take care of the car.
Right.
Mine is like, well, that person that doesn't know anything about cars, that drove it into something and then drove like across country, it still works. Where do you see the responsibility falling in that case? Because that is the philosophy of both brands.
Well, listen, like good maintenance is to be expected or should be expected of every owner of every product, nonetheless luxury product. I think that the big problem with cars as opposed to watches is cars are so much more expensive to fix once there's a problem.
Yeah.
A watch issue, it takes time. Like, you could. I think that service centers are bull in the sense that they take 3 months to fix a problem. Any watch service should be able to be done in a month, or let's say 2 months max.
Yeah.
Barring something where there's a part that can't be sourced. But if it's a new watch, it's not an issue. So it's ridiculous. You're just understaffed. Staff. That's it.
Right. Spend more money.
What do you want from me?
Right.
Well, there's not enough watchmakers. Figure it out.
Yeah. Make more watchmakers.
Right. So that's the opinion there. But no, when it comes to cars, it's much more difficult. You're spending thousands and thousands of dollars. It's no problem.
So that's what I find really interesting about this entire discussion: the methodology behind making a watch or a car perform less, not be as exciting, but you build it for reliability.
Right.
So it goes to Adam Savage, really, with the Seiko. I don't think the Omegas breaking are his fault. Or is his fault.
No.
But I wouldn't be surprised if this guy who's famous for building things is wearing his Seamaster while hammering the life out of something.
Oh, well, that's,
you see what I'm saying?
Sure. Well, again, that's to be expected too. I mean, if you're right, well, people always ask me, what are the limitations of watches? Like, what shouldn't I be doing? I always say, don't play baseball with an expensive watch. The shock from the impact is just too much. Don't chop down a tree.
Famously.
Which was what I did, right?
Yes.
Remember I did that?
Yes.
Yeah, I broke I think it was a Hamilton or something like that, or Bullo or something like that. Broke it. Great watch. Broke it. That's it. What are you going to do?
You made a lot of money on that tree, though. It's the tree in England, right?
What?
You know what I'm talking about?
No.
It might not be England. There's a very famous tree that you stare directly down a valley and you just see one tree. And some teenager chopped it down.
No way.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. The joke would have hit if you understood it.
No, I didn't get it. So yeah, I mean, that's just basic maintenance. Service it when you think it needs service every 5 to 7 years, right? Like, even if there's no problem with it, service it anyway. Not going to hurt, right? And if you don't and you neglect it to save some money, ultimately you're running the risk of a part breaking, and it's going to cost you more money to fix. So just do it. Like, it's $500 or $700. That's not a big expense when it comes to luxury watch ownership, right? Or luxury ownership. $700 every 8 years, 7 years, $100 a year for ownership. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Come on. Good luck finding a car. It's $100 a year for ownership. Of course, cars cost $100,000, $150,000. I understand there's a difference in the value, but it's still owning a luxury product that is on an equal playing field. Like a Rolex Submariner is equally, like luxurious basically as I don't even know what Mercedes currently makes, like Mercedes GLE or whatever the they discontinued the SL, although I think it's back, but not the point. The point is, it's not $10,000 to $10,000, right? A $10,000 watch is an equal $10,000 car, right? A $10,000 watch equals a a $70,000 car, like $75,000 car, you know, because it's like it's just as much of a it's a cut above normal people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
The normal person's tolerance for a watch is not $10,000. Yeah. It's like $0 to maybe $2,500. Right, that's on the high end. Like especially back in the day, maybe go get a tag, a link. You know what I mean? Like that's what a normal guy bought. And then you have a Rolex Submariner for $10,000. You know, and then a normal person is going to drive a regular car, but then a nut job goes and gets the expensive car that he doesn't need. Straps, as many of you should know, bring a whole world of potential to mix up your watch collection. They breathe new life into watches. They help you pull out different colors. They give them new personality. Straps can be very addictive. I know people with 2 watches and 10 straps because it adds so many facets to a collection in a fairly easy and fun way. So that's why they become such a part of the Theo and Harris culture and identity. I think we sell more exotic straps than almost anybody because I just love them so much and I love sharing them with you.
I will give you basic kind of thoughts that I have, and then I want to round it out with the actual ending of this video. Are these brands doing something wrong? Like, do they not have good QC? And then where do you see the actual value of strength versus excitement if we bring it to cars? But I'll hit you with a few things first. So number one, I think with Taylor's my girlfriend's dad, his phone breaking, he's a landscaper, he does a lot of work in bobcats and heavy machinery and stuff like that. The shaking, I think, dislodged apart. I also talked to a few people who rode motorcycles or ride motorcycles, and the vibrations break their watches. Mm-hmm. There I will say, okay, that I do believe you are using your tool for the wrong reason. I don't think your mechanical watch is going to fare well in those conditions. You should probably get something else, a G-Shock, or figure out a different way. But when it gets to the level of a bunch of guys standing around who work office jobs wearing expensive watches that break, I think there is then an issue, and it's on the responsibility of the watchmaking brand, even though it will always feel like a personal issue. Like when your G-Wagon was breaking down, that wasn't embarrassing for Mercedes. That was you being like, oh, my
fucking pain in my ass.
You put it on yourself.
100%.
I think there is a fine line, and that is kind of the point of this entire video. Whose fault is it? At what point?
Yeah, I mean, again, when you're coming down to to misuse, like Taylor's dad, I mean, it's an accident. It's totally an accident. But I can understand. I mean, how I guess you are giving undue vibration, right? So it's an accident, of course. Is there enough literature on what you should and should not be doing with your cell phone? I don't think so.
Of course not.
Right? Like, they should be issuing a bit of more of a, I don't know, like maybe in their client intake. Yeah. And maybe the answers you give could, then get, you receive a certain set of kind of specific guidelines.
And
I mean,
interestingly, that was a problem on certain models.
Oh, that's another thing. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's a hard thing. I mean, when does it come? It was never built right to begin with. I probably shouldn't have done that, even though it wasn't malicious, even though I wasn't being an asshole. Right. I did overshake.
I wasn't
that.
in the Right. I did overshake.
Think about it. Take the phone out of it and think about it like anything else, any other non-technological tool. Yeah. Right. If you're on a bobcat and it's heavy vibration, I'm sure there's a whole series of items that he wouldn't bring on that thing because he knows there's just a lack of awareness. Because how do you know?
Fine dishware.
Right. Like you're not going to bring.
Why did I put this on the bobcat?
Yeah. Right. It broke. Of course it broke. Whereas with watches, again, it's really a lot of it is just it's shock. A lot of it is shock. A lot of it is change in temperature. A lot of it is magnetism, and there's a lot of research and development that go into making these watches resistant against these things. Yes, but what about? So yes, on a theoretical level, on a practical level, the watches get better by the year and they become more resistant to everything. Mm-hmm. But what about the lemon rate? Is that changing? Because a lemon isn't resistant to anything. Right. So
it should be.
Right. Is it 5%? Is it 8%? I heard one brand it was 14%.
As 14% of their watches.
Major brand. 14% of their watches are expected back into service within 3 years.
Wow.
Wow. That's huge. That's
Expect
a
it back
big
into
number.
service, not to be serviced, to be fixed.
To be fixed.
Oh, that's brutal.
That's a really fast, major brand.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a Patreon brand.
That's a
you say.
Patreon conversation. We have that conversation on our Patreon. If you want to come join our Patreon, go down below in the link and join the Zero. And it's a beautiful community. We talk about watches all the time. Podcast weekly. Michael comes on once a month.
Yep.
We do lives. We share community posts. Anyway, come join there, and maybe we can have a little bit more of a candid conversation about some of the brands in their bull.
Yep.
It can almost become insidious at a certain point. It's like, is this just part of your business model? Like, is service part of your model?
Yes, it is.
You know?
100%. And a lot of, again, it goes with car brands, goes with phone brands, whatever it may be. It's like, yeah, that is part of the model.
Yeah.
Like, it does break, and that's fine. You just got to come get it fixed.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, all in all, where does that line kind of, two things line up between durability and excitement in the watch world?
Yeah.
Could be price, could be brand, whatever it may be.
The reality is, if one of these brands spent, $15 million on reducing their error rate, right? I don't think they'd get it back in spades. I don't think they're going to be rewarded for the $15 million investment. I don't think that the watch brands are going to talk about it, meaning the publications.
Because, well, how can a brand even say these break less now?
Right.
How can you make that positive?
Right.
It's going to be like, so they broke a lot before?
Right.
Like, how much is less?
It's kind
and
of
they break
weird.
in general?
What is the brand language around that? What is your positioning, right? I mean, I don't know. Especially because a lot of these brands are owned by conglomerates. So to make any sort of insinuation that your
Omega
watches
breaks less than Longines?
Right.
Like, you just heard our brand.
Right. So there's a lot of that going on too. It's like kind of this, incestuous thing,
What you notice, and it's not just watches, it's like the corporate world in general. There's a lot of smiling and being like, okay, idiots, like enjoy your gifts, enjoy your watches, from the brand perspective, and not specific people, lovers of Omega or builders of Rolexes or anything like that, but the entire conglomerate or the entire brand being like, oh, okay, enjoy, enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that's what I find the most fascinating. And I truly think, like, with Adam Savage, for example, I don't think he was mistreating his watches, but he was wearing them in the shop. And I wonder if a few times, maybe once, maybe twice, of those times I had to go back to the shop, it was because it was due to him slamming a hammer or moving something.
I believe it. I definitely believe that, right? I'm not going to, I don't watch the show, but I definitely believe that. If he's using hammers a lot, and that's a very obvious
very hammering man.
Right, point of shock, right? That's very clearly somewhere where a watch could be damaged. But he's not the only person that's experienced, issues. He's not.
And final question for you.
Yeah.
Ready? Do you know Casey Neistat?
Of course.
Okay. Has a Defender.
It's a Land Rover.
Land Rover. Absolutely demolishes it. Uses it for its purpose. Will knock a mirror off. Will slam it into things and stuff. Gets it fixed. Do you think that is also to be expected from brands? Like, if Nomos is like, well, yeah, we made an outdoor watch. Like, we're expecting you're going to break it and send it back. Is that a thing?
No.
No. Yeah, see, that's what I find.
I don't know. I mean, I know who Casey Neistat is, but I don't follow his channel. I never have.
It's a different philosophy of like, well, I knocked the mirror off. Of course, it's like that's why I have the tool, but I do need to get it fixed.
Yeah. Why'd you knock the mirror off though? Like, 'cause it's funny.
He's like, he's off-roading. Oh, he like bumped into something. Like he was going, the car fell or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a believer of like if there's an accident, don't worry. Like a good friend of mine, has said to me many times, if a problem can be solved with a little bit of money, it's not a problem. It's fine. Relax.
Provided you have the money.
Right? Provided you have them, of course. Provided you have the money, right? We're specifically talking about people who really there's no reason to be worrying about the problem. You can afford to fix it quickly. Consider yourself lucky. Move on. Stop whining. Stop with your anxiety. Chill out and just fix it. And then forget about it.
Especially if you're using a Submariner, for example, for diving or for something that's very heavy. Like, yeah, okay, the watch will break under those circumstances if you push it very hard for very long. Right,
100%. So that being said, I certainly don't believe in like mistreating items. I don't baby my watches.
Yeah, of course.
But God knows I don't. I baby my shoes. Like, if I baby anything, it's my shoes. It's difficult to fix good leather, right? Like it's difficult if you make a gash in your shoe, it is difficult to fix it. And if you do fix it, it's not actually fixed. It's just like it just looks fixed.
Yeah.
And it costs several $100s, right? And these numbers sound ridiculous. When you're buying a really great pair of shoes, like a pair of dress shoes, you can expect to spend between let's say $600 and $1,500, and then they get more expensive than that. Sure. But when a repair is $385, but the shoes were $600, it's like off, man. That's ridiculous. Right. If I buy a Submariner for $10,000, my fix was $5,000. That's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
you.
Right.
It's $500 every 5 years. I'm okay with that.
That's a service.
Right, it's a service.
Right. Yeah.
And I have no problem servicing my shoes, right? Getting them resold, etc. Sure. It's an investment that's worth it. You have to. But no, I do baby those a little bit, especially because I wear Belgians and I wear, a lot of delicate.
You don't wear shoes are going to be running a Tough Mudder.
Right, exactly. But yeah.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting discussion, and I would love to hear from people watching the video. Like, is your watch breaking a lot?
Right. That's actually, this is probably one of the videos where it's most interesting. Like, anecdotal evidence is really the only evidence we're going to get. I don't think we're going to get a lot of research-based evidence on, watch ownership and error rate. So be the sample size, be the sample downstairs. God, be the sample in the comments, and let me know. I mean, have you run into problems with your watches, and if so, not just manufacturer error from factory, but also like down the road, whether it's service. I've seen horror stories at service, like
really?
Watches come back wrong. Like, we can talk all about that. But let me know if you've had problems with your watches, the brands, etc. down below. I'm interested in that.
Yes, please.
All right, and go join our community over on the Zero. Looking forward to seeing you on over there. Shoot me a DM if you join. The watch on your wrist, unlike your iPad, will mean something to someone one day if it doesn't already. Something that will make them smile, walk a little taller, surely at some point cry, but it will mean something.